Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
Thanks, Scott. Yes, today's guest is Terrazas, and she is a powerhouse entrepreneur, marketing strategist, and the visionary CEO behind the Leads Shark. With a background in retirement planning and a passion for helping financial professionals grow their business, Kaylee is on a mission to make authentic lead generation simple, scalable, and wildly effective. She's helped countless advisors attract ideal clients without cold calling or chasing, and her unique approach blends heart, clarity, and results. Whether you're a business owner, wealth strategist, or someone looking to build a financial legacy, Kylie's insights will light the path forward. Welcome to the show, Kylie.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Excited to be here.
Good. So, Kylie, what inspired you to create Lead Sharks? And how did your journey in finance influence the way you approach marketing and business growth today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll kind of back up and do a long story short. In university, I started sales and loved it, right? So I was doing B2C sales, then I got into B2B with medical sales, and then from there, back into B2C with client management. So I had my Series 6, 63, and life insurance license. So just doing financial planning. And that's kind of my sales experience. And then back in 2014, I launched an app which did a total face plant. So every entrepreneur has to have one of those stories, I guess, in their background, but launched an app. I knew I was really good at sales, but I really didn't know a whole lot about marketing. And so I am one of those obsessive people and just go down the rabbit hole. So I really started going down the rabbit hole of, okay, I need a website, I need social media, I need a Google business profile, and figuring out how to bootstrap that myself. So again, long story short, the patent fell through. I was actually a year and a half behind Google, which is amazing. I was on the right track, but they had beat me to the voice transcription that we were launching. So anywho, that was just a great learning experience. And then I started having people reach out and say, oh, wow, you built that website. Can you build my website? Or I need to update my website. So 2016 was the launch into digital marketing for me, where I just started doing websites, SEOs, Google business profiles. And then a lot of the same issues kept occurring with a lot of these business owners, which is kind of like E-Myth Revisited. If anyone's read that book, they're really good at their trade, but there's all these other things that a business owner has to do to succeed. And a lot of times they're not so good at all of those other things. One of them being sales and marketing. And so started lead generation for my clients because I thought this is an easy problem to solve. I know how to do this. And it just kind of morphed into what we have today. I specialize in Google, so getting my clients to the top of Google, whether it's Google Ads, LSA ads, which is local service ads, and then the map pack, getting in the 1 through 3 of the map pack. So basically getting you to the top of Google however I can. And then that uncovered another big bottleneck for clients, which was, what do they do with those calls when they come in? And the answer was most of them are not answering the phones. So we can go down that rabbit hole later about the intake process and how that's kind of what I tell people: client acquisition and intake systems to scale businesses. So that's kind of what we help people do.
Thanks for that. For the newbies, and it's always this classic thing, I think some people really misunderstand that there is a difference between sales and marketing. From your perspective, what would kind of in simple terms, what would you say is the difference, or define both of them so someone would understand?
Yeah, I would say when I started, back after high school, like 20, almost 30 years ago, there was a big separation in sales and marketing. And the line was very clear. I would say in 2025, that line has vastly blurred with social media being a huge tool, not just to connect with people, but to sell things, which is I know everybody's annoyed by it, but it is what it is. So I don't know. I'm leaning towards one of my favorite marketers, Daniel Priestley. He's the author of Oversubscribed. I kind of am leaning on his ideology, which is the lines have started to vastly blur between sales and marketing. I do think, though, however, traditionally speaking, marketers were kind of hide behind the computers and do the stuff, right? Data people. When we start talking Google Ads, oh my God, that is like a lawyer trying to read you a legal contract. You're like, what are you even still speaking English at this point? With all the acronyms and stuff. And that is actually what I find a lot of my clients, they have another agency running Google Ads. And I say, okay, like, what is your communication cadence? Well, they send me a report at the end of every month, and not to be insulting, I'm like, but do you know what you're reading? Do you know what it says? Or are you just looking for like green and red, because there's CPCs, CPAs, like TROAS, CACs, like all of this acronyms. Do you know what the numbers actually mean? And most of them are like, no, I have no idea what it means, but I'm just hoping for the best. So, yeah, so that's kind of a long answer, but sales would lean more on someone's personality, having that like communication with other people. They love to be in front of people. They're good speakers. Traditionally speaking, marketers like to hide behind the computer and do their data analytic reports and not talk to anybody. So that's kind of that's my definition of the separation between sales and marketing.
Okay, great. Then you walked right into my next question I was going to ask. And going into that, I wanted to also mention that Kaylee does have a podcast. It's a Legal Lead Shark. Is that right?
Uh-huh. Legal Lead Sharks. Yep. So it's on
Right, that's
video
your
right now on
podcast. And so,
YouTube. Yeah.
well, okay, it's on YouTube. But what I was going to say, I know that, and I've listened to a couple of your episodes and stuff. You talk a lot about authenticity and connection in marketing, and you
Mhm.
approach that right at the end of your last answer. And so here's my question. Why do you think so many advisors and business owners struggle to generate high quality leads?
I think there's a law firm owner in Detroit. He's one of the top PI attorneys in Detroit, personal injury, which is hard to do. Most competitive, most lucrative space for attorneys. And in the back of, I read his book, Fireproof, like how to build and scale your law firm. Even though I don't have a law firm, I believe like knowing my niche, knowing my market, knowing what people are struggling with. One of the chapters he has in there, which was one of my personal favorites because it's all about marketing, the title of it is Vanilla versus Cherry Garcia. And this is going to answer your question. I'll close the loop here, but he was talking about stepping into law back in the 90s, and everybody was doing the same thing. Everybody had billboards, everybody had commercials, everybody sounded just like the other person. It was almost like they were all reading the same script. And he was a young guy and wanted to be different and stand out in a market of vanilla. He wanted to be the Cherry Garcia. And he has some bangers of advertisements. Like one of them, the scene is set and it looks like a dark night in Gotham City. And he's in his attorney, outfit with his suit with his briefcase. And this guy gets into his car and drops his wallet. And so, being the honest guy he is, he runs to get it and he's chasing the car down, saying, Sir, you dropped your wallet. And out from the side street comes an ambulance with its lights blaring. And as he's running for the navigator, the guy that dropped his wallet, all people see is him running and chasing after an ambulance. So he goes viral on the news and he goes viral on social media. Mike Morris, ambulance chaser. So he like something like that, where he took such a negative connotation for his industry and made it into something funny that almost poked fun at himself. Brilliant marketing. And I think that's where businesses have to get more bold. They have to find their voice and they have to be Cherry Garcia in a vanilla world and not try to look like everybody else, but be okay standing out and finding their value factor and really publicizing that.
Right? And so in mastering this kind of marketing, this connection, I think is what will help uh, lead people that, most of my listeners are looking for more income, right? And they also
Mm-hmm.
looking for more time freedom, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And they also want to have impact, in the world. And it seems like to me that kind of what you're saying is getting more involved in mastering the whole marketing play can really play into that vision. Am I wrong here in my understanding or kind of feeling for what you're saying, or to say a little bit more about that? I mean, what do they need to do to really get into there to mastering that thing, and so they can have that kind of impact?
Yeah, there's two ways to answer that question, and both of them revolve around branding and PR for yourself. Building a personal brand. Here's the thing, in 2025, we are so bombarded for attention, right? We're so overwhelmed with marketing that the people that stand out are the people who are the brand. So when people, to use Mike Morris as another, go back to that example, he is his brand. And in a lot of his ads, he's used his mom, who's now a local celebrity in Detroit. Like, people go up to her on the street and ask for her autograph because she's on all these commercials. But he has created a brand around himself, and also letting his mom be the star of a lot of his advertisement in the way that it's like touched people. People are asking some random lady for her autograph. So I think that it's really, I'll say two things. One, Mike didn't come up with this on his own. He hired a strategist who found out what his secret sauce was and then played off of that to help him create this brand of who he is. So he is Mike Morris that wins. He's not, people don't think of him as like XYZ law firm. They think call Mike, right? That's the branding that he's put out. So there is strategy behind developing a brand and really knowing who you are as a brand. And I think the best way to do that, if you're doing it from an organic standpoint, you don't want to hire people, is one, books. There's wealth of knowledge in books. One of my favorite books is called Story Brand by Donald Miller, and he's just released an updated version of that. You've got to be able to tell your story, and people aren't buying from your business. They're buying from you. And so the more you put yourself out there, especially on video, that's the best way to do it, because you get to see your face. You get to look into your eyes, and you're connecting. If 100 people watch that video, that's like 100 cold calls you just made, and someone actually gets that know, like, and trust factor. But being able to master storytelling, I call it story selling in marketing, but telling your story in a way that solves a problem for somebody, in a way that makes them want to come to you and say, well, I need that problem solved too. So one way that I do that when I'm on podcast, or when I'm hosting people on my podcast, is talking about some of the biggest problems I see in the industry, how I solve those problems. And then, like I told you earlier, we uncovered another bottleneck. If we're running ads for you and now the phones are ringing, but you're not picking up the phones, that was $100 phone call you just lost. And potentially, if you're a law firm or something, potentially $1 million case. So, being able to value add for my clients, but I do that in telling stories. Like, I had a client where I was running, he's a personal injury lawyer in DFW, running about $40,000 a month in Google Ads, which is just stepping on the court in this niche. It is a cutthroat, the most expensive niche to run Google Ads in. So his phones are ringing off the hook, and he calls me about a month into it and says, Kaylee, these leads suck. And I'm like, what are you talking about? In your ads account, I can see what people are Googling. They're Googling file a car insurance claim. Like, I don't understand. So I decided at that point, this was years ago, I decided I'm going to call his intake team and see how they're answering the phone, and see if I can troubleshoot where is the holes in the bucket for this client. So I called this law firm on a Saturday, knowing after hours and overflow calls are the worst. I call him up, and it rang for almost 2 minutes, which is the first, like, I could have just hung up and said, I understand why you're not
Most
converting
people
these
would have.
leads.
Let's be honest. Most people would have hung up. You're hanging in.
So he answers the phone, hello. And I pulled my phone away. I pulled my cell phone away from my ear, thinking, did I dial the number wrong? And I said, is this XYZ law firm? And he said, yeah. And how can I help you? So I did about 3 more of those and took those call recordings. And instead of telling the law firm owner, your intake sucks, which was the problem, I just sent him those call recordings and said, let me know what you think about these. And then he emailed back and said, okay, I see what the problem is. Let's fix it. But when I tell that story to people, other people who are running marketing, may have just had a light bulb moment going, oh, maybe it's not my marketing that sucks. Maybe it's my sales and intake process that's messed up, right? And so that's story selling. That's how you can solve someone's problem indirectly without selling them anything. And we all remember stories, and so it sticks. So I think that's the best form of marketing anybody can do.
Okay, and that's kind of you're doing really good and going from question to question here because I know both in finance and in marketing, and you work a lot with attorneys and things. Trust is the currency that moves people.
Hmm.
And it seems like that there are strategies out there to develop trust, especially in a really noisy world. You said it earlier, how much we're being bombarded. What kind of strategies do you use or teach the people you work with to increase the trust, right? Because they've got to be some sort of level of trust. Yes, to pick up the phone, but also maybe even one step further when they're picking up the phone, they already kind of feel like they know them and they want to work with them. The decision's already been made versus simply shopping around.
Yeah. A lot of it goes back to natural, organic feeling storytelling. So there was an attorney who had an elderly lady that slipped and fell in a hotel room and broke her hip on vacation. And this was a massive settlement claim for them, but they had uncovered that that hotel had maintenance reports saying they needed to replace the stripping on the bottom of the showers, that it was getting slippery. They had complaints. So not only did he win the case for his client, I said, that's a story to sell. But open the loop. Like read the books like Story Brain and things like that that teach you how to start the story in the middle so that you hook somebody into going, well, what happened? I need to close the loop here. What happened? And so being able to share law and to share testimonials like that, one that just built massive trust with people because he's showing up on video. So now instead of me seeing him on a billboard, which is irrelevant, like no one's going to get into a car accident and be like, oh, there's your billboard right when I needed it. But if he's popping up in my feed when I'm scrolling through and he says something, I'm looking at him, he says something relatable that opens a loop in my mind, then I stay to watch that. Now I have a connection with this person. And if I found him entertaining, I might go watch more of his videos about, different things that he's done. And so it's really building trust is all about showing up, and you have to be showing up in a world that's just like it's so much. You have to be posting. Even Google, I will tell you this, like we had a team member that went to the New York conference for Google this year, and they were talking about SEO and search and AI and all the changes in marketing. And I will tell you the summary of that whole weekend, which is an invite only. Like this is the third year this guy's applied and he finally got to go. And you have to pay for your whole trip still, but they only let in a very few number of people. So you're just always on a constant waiting list to get to go to one of these events that Google hosts. And basically the undertone of that entire event was AI is changing so rapidly, we have no idea. So the best thing we can tell you is create video, because video is organic and people can tell the difference between an AI video and a non-AI video, at least at this point still. And those are the ones we're going to prioritize for search. So they're starting to rank more YouTube videos, and they even opened up SEO on Instagram. So if your Instagram's set to public and you post a really good video about your business and it got some traction, if someone Googles the keyword, if you're an HVAC company and you had a banger video that popped off on Instagram and they type in emergency plumber near me, you can now rank your social media for that. So if you had a YouTube channel where you're helping people fix these little DIY things, which 9 times out of 10, they're going to call you to do anyways, because you can watch the whole video. And then I don't know about anybody else, but we've tried to DIY stuff and it ends up just being like a nightmare. But that's a value add. If your video taught me how to do something and I tried it and I failed because I know I'm not, an expert, I'm going to call you then because you're an expert. You just fixed it. I'm going to tell you, come fix it for me then. And that's what social media can be for people if they're showing up consistently. But it takes a lot. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You just have to be super consistent. You know this, having a podcast. If you just didn't show up for 6 months and then you came back to the scene, you just lost all your listeners. So it's just consistency.
We've had other people that do, marketing and things on the podcast. And there's one that always stuck out to me, one particular interview, and he said three things. It says frequency, outcomes, and social proof. That's what you need in what you're doing. So, you know, ongoing posts, ongoing things, and telling a story. And so I like the idea, and especially what you said about organic versus AI generated. And so I mean, it's starting becoming in my vocabulary. I don't know if it's around a lot of places, but there's AI versus OI, right?
Hmm.
Artificial intelligence versus organic intelligence or humans, right? So changing the gears just a little bit, I think that some people treat marketing somewhat like, okay, I've got to do it. Just,
Hmm.
okay, let's do it. I got to spend so much money. It's a necessary evil, if you will. Yet people like you see it as like this wealth multiplier, right? What
Hmm.
would you say to someone, maybe a listener out there, who hasn't yet realized the power of marketing to multiply not just income, but impact and legacy?
Yeah, that's a great question because I 100% agree with you. Most people view marketing, yeah, with a cringe, like, it's a necessary evil. We have to do it. But actually, I would flip
And
that.
let's be honest, sometimes that's where the budget's cut. If
Yep.
there's coming in a tough time and where we cut, it's like, okay, we're going to cut marketing. But sometimes, like, that's the worst thing to do.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but it's just like that. I've seen that multiple times in different businesses, not only in stuff I do, but people I'm talking to. It's like, no, that's the hand that's feeding you. Why are you going to bite it off or chop it off, right? So I sorry, I
Exactly.
interrupted you, but keep going.
No, that's exactly, yeah, you were exactly hit the nail on the head. That's what I was going to say is people don't understand. Like if you have a business right now and sales feels like pulling teeth, it's because you're not doing marketing right. That's the simplest way to sum it up. If the phone is not ringing and you're having to, door knock or pull doors or whatever constantly, it's because you're not doing marketing right. And so I think most people don't know how to market, and that's why it is something that we want to put on the back burner or avoid. But I recently spoke with a CFO, a fractional CFO for law firms. She worked internally for 10 years. Now she's fractional. And I'm like, thank you. I need to have you on my podcast because it's coming from the mouth of someone other than me. Because, of course, everyone's going to say you're biased. You're a marketer. You're going to say I should be spending money on marketing. But she said when she goes into a law firm, the first thing she looks at in their numbers is what is your percentage of overhead expenses and payroll versus your marketing budget. And she said, I can tell them right away if they're going to last more than 2 more years because she can go in and if there's a 50% overhead or more on their payroll expenses, meaning they're team heavy, and then the marketing expenses is under 30%, she's like, there's no way you can sustain this. The numbers don't work. And so again, we could talk about the E-Myth Revisited and stuff like that. We don't see our own blind spots. And if we don't have the lawyer I told you about earlier, Mike Morris, he made it to about that messy middle. He was making millions. He was doing okay. He had a small team, but he just hit that ceiling and he was like, "Man, I can't get past the ceiling." And he hired a business coach because, again, we can't see the blind spots that we have. Otherwise, they wouldn't be our blind spots, right? As soon as he got his business coach in, who, by the way, this is interesting, is the author of the book Traction, the year that book came out, which Traction, oh my gosh, now I forgot the author's name. But he talks about systems. You have to have these systems in place in order to, scale your business. As soon as he talked to him, he said, Mike, I can tell you your problem right now. And he said, what? He said, you're a visionary, but you don't have an integrator. And he said, what do you mean? He said, it's like you are going to a sports game and there's no scoreboard. You don't know who's winning, who's losing, how much time is left. You have no idea what's going on. That's what an integrator does. An integrator, like your COO, your operations officer, that's where these people thrive. They want to know all the numbers, all the data, are we payroll heavy? Are we marketing heavy? What's our conversion rate for everything? That's an operator. And he said, right now, you've been running your whole law firm as a visionary and you're stuck because you can't push past the operational issues that are going on inside of your organization because you can't see them, because that's not what your gift is. And so as soon as he hired, and it's still his chief operation officer now, this is back in the mid 90s, hired John, and I don't even know how to say his last name. This guy, 2025, he can within 5% accuracy tell you exactly what they're going to bring in that year in settlement closes, which is mind blowing, because for a personal injury firm who works off of how much is this car accident valued at? Well, this one's valued more, or this death case was valued at this, but this one's valued more. Like, I don't even know how he can predict this. Like what magical wand he has to predict this with the, it's not an e-commerce business. You're not selling products that are valued at the same amount. But anyway, so John gets in there, and within a couple years, Mike went to the top of his game. And he said, I offloaded 50% of my workload to people who love doing it, and I hated doing it. So I could be a powerhouse attorney that won cases. I could be the brand in the face of my company, and I could scale my business because I could focus on my 20% zone of excellence and let everybody else do what they were good at and what I wasn't good at. And now he's closed over $1.5 billion in cases. He closes over $300 million a year in cases. He's got a team of 300 people that work there, one of the biggest PI firms in the nation. And it all came to fruition when he realized you're one person and there's no way you can wear all the hats in your business. You can't be the HR guy, the janitor, the person answering the phone, DIYing your marketing. And I come up against that. Like, I had an HVAC company who had us in for a marketing consultant. And within 2 seconds, I could tell him two things. I said, one, your budget allocation is all wrong. You're spending $15,000 a month on pattern interrupt marketing, TV and radio. When someone has an HVAC, plumbing, or electric issue, they're not going to be watching your commercial. And hopefully that branding helped, but that's not where they're going. Straight to Google, and whoever's at the top is going to get the call. And whoever answers their phone first and can get there first is going to get the job. And that's just the way it works. And then you're spending only $5,000 a month on your Google, and you're trying to DIY your Google to save money so you can spend more money on your pattern interrupt marketing. I said, here's the problem. If I go down the street, which literally across the street from this company, they're here in Oklahoma City, across the street was their biggest competitor. I said, if I went across the street and said, hey, let me run your Google ads, and you are competing against me, and that's all I do. This is like we're playing a game of chess, and you know how to play checkers, and I'm a chess master. I'm going to kill you in the ads because I know how to do it. And you're trying to save a little money there where you should be dumping all your money into Google ads with somebody who knows how to play that game, because that's what gets the phones ringing. And that's where your complete cycle of where are my clients coming from, Google searches, and whoever's at the top wins. So it's different in every industry, but in essence, marketing it's a game, and those who know their numbers and know how to play the game, they win. And for law firms, there's people Google is a money printing machine for law firms. And there's other law firms out there that Google is a money burning pit. And the only difference is that one person knows how to play the game and the other person doesn't. And that's why they're losing. So
in an attempt to not to make this podcast too long, we're going to break this into two parts. So this has been the end of part one. We'll see you next week for part two.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.